As I was listening to Pastor Alex's sermon, I was encouraged by how he taught the story of Abraham. This whole Lenten season here at Good Shepherd, we're doing something a little bit different. We're not reading gospel readings. We're not reading epistles. We're reading these central stories from the Old Testament, or as we say, the Hebrew Scriptures, to see this grand truth all of these weeks. That throughout time, throughout the story of God's people, God has always been calling, pushing, nudging, sometimes kicking, other times inviting people to get out of a stagnant, static, settled existence. That God is always calling people to move forward, to take a risk. And last week, through the story of Abraham and Sarah, we saw that the central thing God was doing was inviting somebody, a couple, late in their years, who were living in the land of their ancestors, whose life was settled, to walk by faith, not by sight. And the whole story of Abraham is a story of God saying to Abraham, I have something for you. You don't have children right now. I'm telling you, you will have more descendants than the stars in the sky. Abraham and Sarah look at each other and are like, us? But you need to get up and you need to move. Well, where, God? Abraham asks. And God says, I'll show you. And the whole story of Abraham, if you read through Genesis, you'll see it's quite comical, actually, at times. Abraham and Sarah are caravanning around, and they get to a new location. And as was the custom, Abraham will build a little altar in that place. And then Abraham will turn toward the sky and say, is this the place, God? And God will say, no. Keep going. And he'll get somewhere further down the road. Is this the place, God? No. Keep going. And you can imagine the frustration growing. But the whole story is this illustration for us as people of faith that the central thing we have to learn is to walk by faith, not by sight. Be obedient to following God. And that's really the genesis of this whole series through Lent. We're focusing on how God has not just called people from the scriptures a long time ago to move forward, but ultimately how God is calling us to move forward. And I think there's a challenge for us in the year 2026 of our Lord in North America. Communities are settled, roads are laid. We live very static, stagnant at times lives. Life feels settled. And yet, spiritually, physically, in matters of the heart, in matters of journeying with God to do something remarkable through our lives, we're called to move forward. This week, we continue that theme with the next great character, I think, in the scriptures, which is Moses. Moses has the same lesson to learn as Abraham, and yet I would posit a more challenging lesson. There's a twist for Moses. Abraham was never told where he was going, other than the place you'll end up is a promised land. Moses is told the same thing. You're going to go to a land flowing with milk and honey. You're going to return to the exact spot you're standing on right now, Moses, but things will be so different. But in order to get there, I'm asking you to go somewhere very specific. And it's a place you don't want to go. It's the last place you'd like to be. Abraham never knew where he was going. Moses knew and resisted. So what's the story of Moses? A brief overview. Moses was born an Israelite, but he grew up in the royal court, the royal house of Pharaoh in Egypt. Moses has this hidden identity, really, where he is one of the oppressed masses in Egypt, serving the most powerful empire of the time, the Egyptians and Pharaoh. The story harkens back to when he's an infant and Pharaoh is slaughtering babies, and Moses' mother puts him in a bushel basket and floats him down the river, and somebody from the royal family picks Moses up and takes Moses in. So Moses grows up with part of his identity hidden even from himself for a while. He's afforded, though, the luxuries of growing up basically in Egyptian royalty. He's educated in a fine way. He has the best tutors. He's learned. And yet, as he comes of age, Moses has this sort of reckoning with his identity. I have all the privilege, I have all the access of all the power in the world, and yet I cannot shake that my people, who I truly am, are being oppressed and are suffering and have the boots of the guards on their necks every day building palaces for Pharaoh. And so when Moses is just of age, when that emotion can meet anger and meet physical strength, Moses kills a man. He murders one of the Egyptian guards. And from that point forward, Moses finds himself on the run. He leaves Egypt. And he settles in now to Jethro's land, his father-in-law's land, near Mount Horeb. And by the time we encounter Moses in Exodus 3, what I read, 40 years have passed. Moses has been out of Egypt for 40 years. I'm 40 years old. It's my entire lifetime. And that might seem young to some of you, but that seems like a long time to me. The point is, for 40 years, Moses has not been in Egypt. But I would argue Egypt has not left him. For 40 years, Moses has lived a wholly different life, but if Moses is anything like you or me or any other human, which I have to argue he was, his thoughts and his memories and his angst and his anger and the fear didn't disappear when he left Egypt. And maybe these 40 years of tending sheep on a hillside, where often at night you imagine tending sheep on a hillside at night, you light a fire and you keep yourself warm. I imagine that there were many peaceful nights where Egypt was all but a memory, but I guarantee you there were nights when Moses stared into that fire and watched those logs and those embers consume wood and sticks and leaves, and Moses was staring into his own life about all the things that have crumbled and withered and been turned into ash. Am I the only one who stared at a fire and thought that? And so that's why I think the call story of Moses is really a metaphor for his life. So there Moses is, 40 years removed, doing something wholly different. And a bush starts to burn. But it's not consumed. It's not swallowed up. And I think what's happening here is actually a picture of what Moses needed to move forward in faith. It's almost as if the fire represents all of those things in Moses' life that have consumed him. Anger for his people. Frustration, fear of Pharaoh. Thinking, does the empire always win? My life is a shell of what it used to be. And as Moses is invited to stare into the bush that is burning, the fears don't go away, and yet the remarkable thing about this is that these things are no longer consuming. And from this, God calls Moses to do something he absolutely doesn't want to do, which is to walk with the fear, through the fear, and to go to the place that he has avoided for most of his life. And then there are these 5 excuses Moses gives God. Number one, who am I? Who am I? Later, he said, who are you? Actually, who are you calling me through this crazy bush? And we get, side note, that's where we get for the first time in the scriptures, God telling somebody who God is. I am who I am. Yahweh. Yahweh. Which mirrors the breath. I am the breath of life. I am who I am. And then Moses says, well, what if they reject me? What if they don't listen to me? What if they reject me? I mean, come on. And then Moses goes, I'm not a good speaker. I don't talk well. And then finally at the end, I just don't want to go. Who am I? Who are you? What if they reject me? I'm not a good speaker. I don't want to go. Have you ever felt like that? Or better yet, can you think of the first time in your life you felt genuine fear? I can. And now don't laugh at me. Don't laugh at me. 6th grade. First time I was ever asked to speak publicly. Presentation on Abraham Lincoln. In the morning that my ticket was called, I had to give my presentation and give a little speech in front of the other 6th graders at Rose Hill Elementary School. I was terrified. I remember asking my mom to let me call in sick to school. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not standing in front of them. I was in speech therapy my entire life through my formative years because I slurred my S's. I still do a little bit. Do you hear that? I couldn't pronounce my R's. I'm not going to stand in front of the class and talk about Abraham Lincoln. I was convinced that I would implode. Ooh. I've been thinking about the second time I was terrified. 8th grade. Now, don't make fun of me. 8th grade. Hannah Ashton Middle School. It was this dance, 8th grade dance at the end of the year. And I really thought Katie Wilson was cute. Problem is, Katie had an identical twin, Allie. I had built up the courage to ask Katie to the dance, but the week leading up to asking her, I'm convincing myself, full of fear, I'm accidentally going to ask Allie. They're identical twins, and they'll be like, so I remember the day she was at her locker. I'm like, that's Katie's locker, not Allie, right? That's Katie, not Allie. I'm stepping toward her. I look at her, 8th grade Lorne, Katie? She looks at me. I'm like, oh no, it's Allie. It's Allie. Is this Allie? I'm like, Allie, Kate, we dance, me, you? She's like, yeah. I'm like, are you Katie? Yes. Oh. Fear, silly. But there have been some real moments too. Real moments. Like that moment that I didn't want to admit when I was 18 years old and without talking to my mom or dad, don't ever do this if you're a young person, without talking to my mom or dad, I drove down to the recruiter station and I joined the Army without ever talking to my parents. Literally signed. And felt so confident and yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a soldier. And then the thing I couldn't admit to anyone, which when I had to go to MEPS and then actually ship off to Lawton, Oklahoma for boot camp, being terrified that I didn't have what it takes. Or in 2019, when we were pregnant with our 3rd child. And the doctor told us during a normal routine ultrasound that your child would be born missing part of his brain. The part that connects the 2 hemispheres, and we don't have a whole lot of answers for you right now other than your child likely has a genetic disorder, condition, and there's a huge spectrum of what he may face. And the rest of that pregnancy, months and months, being wrapped up in fear, Not that my child would be born with adversity, that I wouldn't have what it takes to parent a special needs child. That I wasn't cut out for it. Just overwhelmed and convinced that, like, God, how am I gonna? I mean, they told us there was a chance he wouldn't be able to walk till he was 4. There was a chance he'd be born blind because the corpus callosum is right near the optic nerve. All of these things, all of this fear. Or the one most recently, 1 year ago to this weekend, 1 year, man, I had never been more terrified in my life to preach a sermon than the weekend I stood before you and told you that my marriage had ended and that I was walking through a divorce. Convinced leading up to that that's the end of me. Like, I'm the pastor. Will I be met with judgment? People start gossiping? How do I face this? These are some of mine. I know you've got them. I know you do. Because you're human. Moses had them. Who am I? How can I? And like I told the kids, what I've discovered through my life, and I'm not done living, got a lot of life to live, right? Is that God doesn't always meet our fears with a pep talk. I've tried the pep talks. Sometimes they work. God doesn't say to Moses, you can do it, buddy. I believe in you. It won't be so bad. It's terrifying. I mean, really? Identical twins? How do you know you're asking the right one out? But God says to Moses, I will be with you. That's it. I will be with you. I will be with you. And when we're going through moments of upending fear, anxiety, angst, things we don't want to do, conversations we don't want to have, risks we don't want to take, when we're going through it and we're living through it, don't we always think there's no way I can get through this? But isn't it amazing that when you get through it and you look back on your life, you find you're still standing? You're still here? God was with you? God has been with you? Not every moment of crippling fear in my life or your life has ended with a beautiful picture, and it's not like bluebirds fly through the sky every time and it's all a happy ending. Life isn't like that all the time. And yet, through our faith, we know the end of the story is that we ultimately will not be consumed. For even the things that wither and die, God says will rise again. Because the mystery of our Christian faith is where the world sees death, God knows resurrection's coming. Every time. It's the promise of our faith. Cycle of life isn't that we live, and then we die. It's daily that we die and are born again, born anew. We live to see another day. Not every moment of fear in my life or yours has ended with a pretty picture, but I can tell you, God has been with me every single moment of parenting Luke, Gerald, Hlad. Not because I have what it takes, but because God is with me. And that first moment that nurse put that baby into those arms, not all the fears went away, not all the anxieties, not all the worries, but man, was their perspective. And I can tell you a year ago as I stood before you and I left church that Sunday, just like, poof, every single day since, I have been supported and loved by you. Thank you. Thank you. A vision of true abundance. I want you to think about what bush you're staring into in your life. What threshold do you find yourself? It could be big or small. And as you stare into these things that the world might tell you is going to consume you, going to be the end, the fears, the worries, the anxieties, the angst. Did I save enough for retirement? What about all the medical bills? What about the diagnoses? What about the estranged relationship? What about the job market? What about what's happening in the world, in Iran and all over right now? There's so much noise and so much chaos, and sometimes we're just convinced everything's being swallowed up into a fire and it's all just grass withering. Maybe that's where you are to some degree. But like Moses, we too are equipped through our faith to stare into a fire that will not consume. And we can walk down from Mount Horeb, and because God is with us, we can go back to Pharaoh and we can face it together. Do you know how lions hunt? The male lion will go to the watering hole and look real big and scary and furl the mane and let out the biggest roar, right? King of the jungle, king of the Sahara, the fiercest looking animal, that male lion. And all of the gazelle and all the zebra and all those that are drinking from the watering hole, what do they instinctively do? They run away from the scary lion. But did you know that in the lion community, it's the female lionesses that do the hunting? And so when all the gazelle run away from the big male lion, they run right into the trap of the female lionesses that devour them. If you find yourself like a gazelle just trying to get a drink of water, when the fear comes, run toward it. Because when all the gazelle run at the lion is overwhelmed, the single lion, and they usually all get away. Let it be a metaphor for your life. The thing you're most afraid of is your greatest work. Run toward it and know God is with you.